Hello everyone and welcome to the den. Once again, I am canning. Today we're going to be pressure canning black beans. For mine, I'm going to do, I've already started my dried beans soaking. They soaked all night long. I'm doing 7 pounds, so I'm hopeful to get at least 20 pints out of these. If I have anything left over, I'll make them for dinner tonight. I'm also going to add onion to mine as well as green chili in some of them, but like I said, I'm going to be doing hopefully at least 20 pints. Now I broke down the pricing on this, and if I add onion plus the dried beans plus green chili, I think in all I'll be in about $12. Now I already have the jars, so I'm not going to count that in my cost because that's something that is reusable. So I'm about $12 in, I'd say. And if you divide that by 20, you get about 60 cents. So at Sam's Club right now, you can get a 6-pack of black beans for $5. It's like $4.98. So if you break that down, it's about 83 cents a can. Now, sometimes you can find sales on beans and things at some of the local grocery stores. A pint jar is about 1.5 ounces more than a can of beans, so you're actually canning more too, however many that would be. So right now I haven't started anything but soaking the beans, so I am going to chop up some onion. I have my green chilies here that are canned already, and I'm gonna do 2 cans of these. I'm gonna add, I don't know, a tablespoon or so, and I'll see how far it gets me. If I don't get through all of them, that's fine. These are medium, so medium heat, so if I don't get through all of them, that's fine. But I am going to add onion, a little salt, a little cumin, and I think that'll be it. That's how I would normally make my beans if I did them in like the pressure cooker, if I cooked them all day. That's how I would make them. So I'm gonna start get going right now, and I'll bring you back as I move through my steps. Okay, so the first thing I have going on here is I'm just gonna rinse. Like I said, I let my beans soak overnight, so you really need to rinse these. Don't use the water that they soaked in. Get rid of that. You definitely don't want that water in with your beans. So I'm gonna give these a good rinse, and then I'm going to get them on the stove, and I'm going to let them boil for about 20 to 30 minutes. Maybe, closer to 20, between 20 and 30. Yes. I have my jars soaking over here in some hot soapy water. I'm going to do them in batches, and then I'll rinse them and start letting them dry on a towel. But right now, I'm just getting these beans really good and rinsed. Now these beans, you need to have, when you're soaking them, make sure that you give them plenty of water for soaking, because they soak up a ton of water. I will tell you that last night in this bowl here, I had it to about here with beans, and by the morning it was full. So give your beans plenty. I have two things of beans that I had soaked. So give your beans plenty of water to soak, and then the first thing you want to do is get them, before you soak them, clean them. Pick out any rocks, and then wash the field. They come in the field, so get all the field dirt off because they aren't clean. So anyways, that's what I'm doing now, letting my jar soak. I'm going to get these on the stove. I have a really big stock pot here that I'm going to put these in. And while these are getting up to heat and starting their boil, I'm going to chop up my onion and continue to rotate my jars from the hot soapy water on, rinse them and put them on the drying rack. At this point, I have all my jars washed, all my lids and bands, and my beans are on the stove. I'll show you that. All right, I have my beans in this pot here, and let me tell you, this is a big pot. I'm not sure how many quarts this pot is, but it's a lot. I got it at Walmart. It's a big pot. I think I paid like 20 or 25 bucks for this pot, but the beans are like right here. So it's pretty full. And I think it's gonna take a while for this to come up to a boil. So I'm just gonna let these do their thing while I'm chopping the onion. Okay, so now I'm at the point where my beans have boiled for nearly half an hour. I have about 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to put a 1/4 cup of onion, and then I chopped up some fresh garlic. I'm gonna put a little bit of that in there. Like I said, some cumin and my green chilies. So I'm gonna start adding the onion and the garlic and all that right now. You could definitely cook all that together and add that in and use your bean water to fill these jars with. But I don't know if I'm gonna have enough water from in there. I'm not sure. Should, because they're floating in it, but I also have my kettle ready to go if I need to use that water too. I'm gonna start filling my jars and I'll show you how to do this one. Okay, so I have my funnel out and I'm just gonna add a little onion. I'm gonna do about a teaspoon or so of these green chilies. And then about a 1/2 teaspoon. This is a 1 teaspoon measure, but I'm only gonna use about a 1/2 because I don't want them to be too garlicky. And then I have my cumin here, and of course it's at the end of the jar, so it's gonna be a pain, but I wanna use it up. And I'm gonna do just a little bit, if you can see that. Just a small amount. This is a 1/4 teaspoon, so I'm only gonna do a small amount, not even a 1/2, so that wouldn't even be an 1/8. Because I don't want them to be overpowered. And then I'm gonna use a 1/2 teaspoon of canning salt. One quick tip on the canning salt, they have this by the mason jars, but if you go to the food section and you look for the iodized salt, they have bigger boxes of canning salt, and it's way cheaper than buying those bags. So just a little tip there. All right, so now I've added my onion, my garlic, my cumin, my green chilies, my salt, and so all that's left now is to add my beans. So I'm gonna get my beans over here, and we're gonna do that too. Okay, so these beans are still very hard, hard to the touch. They're hot too. So you don't want them fully cooked. You just basically want them heated. But the longer you soak in this process, it will help with the gassiness that the beans cause. You don't want that, so that's why you soak. So I'm just gonna fill my jar up. You're gonna want 1 inch of headspace. I have my canner going as well. All right, so that's a little bit too much. So I'm gonna dump some of those back in there. And that's why I did my onions and my other stuff first, because I want these to have, you know, I don't want to add too much and then the stuff's on top. So that's why I did it in the layer like that. Okay, so I'm about here with these, and it's about to the neck here. And I'm gonna give them a little bit of extra space. I'm gonna do my fill, my juice line to the 1 inch. Okay, and this one is all done, and I'm gonna go ahead and do all of the rest. Okay, so I have all of my pints here filled up, and I'm gonna debubble. And this is pretty liquidy, so there shouldn't be too much air in these, but either way, you still should debubble. And then you're gonna adjust your headspace as needed. I started off with 7 pounds of dry beans, and I probably could have got away. I can never remember how much I need. So these videos actually will do me a service as well. But I'd say 5 pounds of dry beans would have been enough. But I also wanted to have some for dinner tonight, so it'll be fine. I have them on the stove right now, and I'll just let those cook all day. And I just added some chicken bouillon, dumped all that onion in there, and my garlic that I had, all the extra stuff, and some cumin. Normally I would cook them with a ham hock, but my ham hock is frozen. I probably could throw it in there, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll get a little saucy and want to add my ham hock. But anyways, right now I'm just debubbling. So the reason why I'm canning beans is we eat canned beans all the time. I probably already debubbled these, but whatever. We eat canned beans, especially black beans, all the time. And if you are preparedness minded, the biggest thing for us where we live will be if you're in a situation where you're depending on what you have. Water is going to be an issue. For some people in some areas, it's not. But where we live, it is. That's going to be one of our biggest issues is water. So I'm going to have to add more liquid to these. Anyways, water is a big issue for us. So it's nice to do your beans, can them up, and not leave them all dry because they take in a tremendous amount of water. So while we have water readily available, I want to make sure that I have a good supply of beans on hand. Alright, so I'm going to have to adjust my headspace here because you want a 1-inch headspace, and I'm about a 1/4 inch short on most of these. So I'm going to add and bring my headspace up to the correct level, and we'll be back to wipe rims, add lids, and rings. Alright, so I've adjusted my headspace. I'm just going to take my damp rag. There's no fat in these, so a damp wipe will be fine. You can use vinegar again if you want to, that's fine. I'm just going to use water, and while I'm wiping my rims, I'm checking for any imperfections in the seal or in the rim here so that I make sure that everything seals really good. So like I said, water could be a big issue, so canning your beans up and not just leaving them dry is a good idea in my opinion. Plus it's nice to be able to add the onion and some of the good flavor into these beans now, as opposed to doctoring up a canned, store-bought can of beans. So these will be awesome to add to the shelf. And I love homemade black beans. They're just so much better than the cans you get in the store. If you've ever pressure cooked your black beans, or any type of bean, that's really, really good. Alright, so all of those look good. I'm going to grab my lids and bands. All I did was washed and dried these. My beans were boiling over. Now these are pints, so they're going to treat beans pretty much the same as you would treat meat. My pints will be 75 minutes in the pressure canner. All right. Now the bands. Whoa, getting a little carried away there. You can do these in quarts too. There's no problem with that. Again, same as meat. If you wanted to do quarts, it would be 90 minutes. But I do pints because, again, I don't always know what I'm going to be making. I might only want, now I almost always use at least 2 cans of black beans, but that's fine. I can always use 2 pints. But if I had a recipe that I was going to do and I only needed 1, like I always say, I'd rather have, I'd rather have the right amount rather than too much, and then it maybe not get eaten as a leftover or something like that. All right, so finger tight means just that, finger tight. Okay, and let's load these up in the canner. Okay, so here's my canner. Like I said, I already have the heat on because these jars are quite warm. And I can fit 20 in here. Let's just load these bad boys right on in. There's number 10. Okay, and then you grab your rack. If you don't have a rack, just stagger them. I got this on Amazon, but it's a Presto rack because I wanted to make sure that it was exactly the rack for my canner. Okay, so we are fully loaded. Now I'm going to grab my lid. All right, so this canner, you're going to line up the arrows and then twist it on. My heat is at medium right now, and that's all I'm going to leave it at. So the next stage is the vent stage, and we'll come back as soon as it gets there. Okay, so we are at the vent stage now, and you can see this coming up pretty solidly and thick. When you get to this stage, you set your timer for 10 minutes, and that's all you do. Right now, you guys, my 10 minutes is up, so I'm gonna drop my weight on here. My valve in the back has already popped up, so we are gonna be under pressure here real soon. So I just dropped my weight, and now all I'm doing is waiting for this dial gauge here to raise to 13, because that's where I need to be for my elevation. Be very familiar with how your canner works because every canner is different. This is a 23 quart Presto, but otherwise, yeah, just make sure you know exactly how your canner works, where you need to be at, what weight you need for your canner. This is a 15-pound weight. Doesn't matter on this canner. There's no different weights because it's a dial canner. So this will not rock until it gets past a 15-pound pressure mark. So I'm not going to hear any until I know I need to turn that heat down. But right now I'm just waiting for this to get to 13. As soon as it does, I will set my timer. I wanted to let y'all know one quick little side note. Now this is, like I said, a 23 quart Presto, and I did put 20 pints of 20 pint jars in there. Now if you were doing wide mouth jars, you are not going to get that many in there. You're only probably going to get, I think the maximum capacity for wide mouths are 16 pints. So these were all regular mouths today that I used, so that's why I was able to get 20 in there. So if you even have a mixture of regular and wide mouth, which sometimes I do, you're going to get less in there. That wide mouth is just, they're just more broad at the top. It doesn't allow for that spacing. So be wise of that. That's the only reason why I got 20 in there, because I used regular mouth jars. Alright, so we are back, and we are just hit the 13, so I have started my timer for 75 minutes because these are pints. If you were doing quarts, it would be 90. So we got 75 minutes. Now at this point, you're at pressure and you have your heat set. Now I always turn my heat down a little bit once it gets past that pressure point. Let it go ahead and get past a little bit. You don't have to worry about keeping it right at the 13. That's alright. You don't have to worry about that. You want to have it, in my opinion, you want to have it a little higher than, let's say your pressure is 11. You want to have it between, 11 and 13. That's fine. I'm going to keep mine usually sticks around 15. So I'll keep my heat adjusted properly, and that's what you're looking at right now. Now some stovetops, you're going to have a pretty constant heat, and you know that you can turn it to a certain spot on your dial, and you can leave it there and you'll be good. My stove with the propane, the natural gas, or it's just this stove, I don't know. I have to really keep an eye on my pressures. Most of the time it's because they'll go really high and this will start to rock, which is okay. You can adjust your heat lower. You just never want it to go underneath that pressure that you need to be staying at. If it goes underneath, like for me, if it went underneath 13, then I would have to start my timer all over again once I got it back up to 13. So I never want to do that because that's a total waste of time and energy. So I try to keep it, you know, it usually will stay right kind of where it is, maybe a little bit higher up to the 15, and that's just fine with me. But for the next 75 minutes, we're going to keep it right here. And as soon as that timer is done, we will come back. Okay, so my timer has just ran out, and all I did was turn the heat off, and that is it. You can walk away, leave it alone, don't touch anything on the canner, just turn the heat off, and that is all. What we're doing right now is we're just gonna wait for this pressure gauge to drop all the way to 0, for the valve in the back to drop, and once that happens, then we'll come back. But don't do anything right now on your canner. Just turn the heat off and walk away. So my pressure has gone down to 0. The valve in the back has dropped. So I'm going to remove this weight. And at this point, you're just making sure that no steam is coming out of here, and there is not. So now you can take off your lid. So let me back this out. So as you're taking off your lid, you want to make sure to open it away from your face. In my kitchen, this microwave is right here, so it's kind of difficult, so I just try to lift it off quickly. So let me do that. Steam is going to come out of here a lot, so as you move across whichever way, just be careful of the steam. And just set your lid aside. And if you can see in there, that's what they're looking like. And I'm just gonna let them sit in here for a little while, and then I will take them out. All right, I'm just gonna grab these out of here, and this is what they look like. Try to keep them straight up and down. I'm gonna set this down because I don't want it to pop on me or something weird to happen. Okay, so as you're pulling those out, just try not to tilt them. I have accidentally tilted some before, and I'll see like juice come out of them. So that could cause, you know, a sealing problem, especially like these have like a water base to them. It's not like a sauce or anything, and it's not fatty, but you don't want anything in between that lid and the rim. So you want a good tight seal on it. So be careful when you're lifting them out, put them on the table and just sit them there all night long, let them rest overnight. And then the next, like tomorrow, once they're all cooled down and they've rested, I will wash them really well. And sometimes they don't need to be washed, but I usually just give them a wash and take the rings off, and then I'll put them on the pantry shelf, and that's it. So that's gonna be it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you give me a like and subscribe to this channel for more content, and watch my other videos. There's lots of good ones on here already. So I'll see you in the next video.